The first thing that I want to make sure we do is go through tomorrow's folder. Everything we need for tomorrow is in that folder, and I think it would be really helpful if we go through it together. So the first thing that I want you to note is a reminder that I have office hours tomorrow, 10:30 to 11:15. The best use of those office hours would be to continue reviewing or for you to ask me questions about the free response. So you're welcome to come to office hours and talk about pretty much whatever you want, but I'm just thinking about the Unit 4 tasks that we have to deal with this week, and the best use of tomorrow's office hour time would be to talk free response questions or to continue reviewing office hours 10:30 to 11:15 tomorrow. The next thing in the Wednesday, February 10th folder is your Wednesday work, but notice my air quotes. It's not really work. It is a super quick checklist that we are going to use to make sure that we are on track and to take attendance. So let me just click it and show you how quick and easy this is. It's a checklist. I am working diligently on my FRQ and preparing for the multiple choice exam. Yes. If I need any help, I'm coming to office hours. Yes. I am taking full advantage of the review resources. Yes. Hit submit. This is how I know that you are on pace tomorrow, and this is how I will take attendance for tomorrow. So any questions just about that one piece, what you have to turn in before midnight tomorrow for attendance purposes? Just that quick checklist. Questions about that? Okay, so then the next things in our Wednesday, February 10th folder are the Unit 4 FRQs. There's a quantitative analysis FRQ and there's an argumentative FRQ. Notice that they're grayed out. That's because I haven't published them yet. I'm going to publish them immediately after 9th period today. The method to my madness is to ensure that people are paying attention to today's class. But if you want to get started on these FRQs at 2:26 today, then by all means, you are free to do so. I think it would absolutely be a good idea to take a look at these FRQs before office hours tomorrow, since office hours tomorrow are your best opportunity to ask questions. So those FRQs will be officially posted at 2:26 today. They are due by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. So that means you have tonight to work on them, you have Wednesday to work on them, you have part of your day Thursday to work on them. Obviously, I know you have other stuff to do, but I'm just listing all the days. On Friday, in class, we are going to talk current events. If you think that a better usage of your time would be to work on the FRQs, then just keep yourself muted and work on the FRQs. And then you have all day Saturday and all day Sunday. I know that Sunday is Valentine's Day, but I have a couple of thoughts about that. One is, who cares? And the next is, if you do care, that's lovely. You should just go ahead and get those FRQs done before Sunday then. You have plenty of time to not have to do these FRQs on Valentine's Day. And so by all means, if working on Valentine's Day is not appealing to you, then go ahead and get those FRQs turned in. As usual, I am happy to look at FRQs ahead of time. I would love to talk about them during office hours tomorrow. I will answer emails for the next however many days. You can come before class. You can stay after class. I'm always happy to look at FRQs ahead of time. They are due by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, and eventually on Sunday, I will go to bed. So if you want me to look at your FRQs, let's try to get those to me before 6 p.m. on Sunday. Because I know I said I was happy to look at them. I wouldn't use the word happy after 6 p.m. on Sunday. So happy to look at them before that, but once it gets to be 6 p.m. on Sunday, if I get a whole bunch to look at that point, then I'm just rushing through them before it's time for me to go to bed and for you to turn them in. So if you want me to take a look at your FRQs ahead of time, the earlier you can get me your work or your questions, the better. Next in our Wednesday, February 10th folder is a recording of yesterday's discussion. After school yesterday, I re-recorded that conversation where I went through each of the chapters and gave you hints about the multiple choice. So this is short. It does get cut off at the end because my iPad ran out of batteries, but it doesn't cut off any important content. So you can listen to that if you are interested. And then here are the FRQ instructional videos that I have shared with you a bunch of times before. I'm just sharing them with you again. So that is our Wednesday folder, including our FRQs that are due on Sunday and our quick Wednesday checklist that I will use for attendance. What questions do you have about that? Okay then, so a reminder that Thursday in class, we are taking the multiple choice portion of your Unit 4 exam. So you'll come to the Zoom or you will show up to the classroom on Thursday. We will go into Schoology together, and it is in Schoology that you will find the Unit 4 multiple choice questions. They aren't posted yet. I'm intentionally not posting them until your class on Thursday. Questions about that? Okay, then let me just check the time here. We have until 1:53. All right. Here's my plan for the day then. I want to talk about topics that might appear, no, not might, topics that are going to appear on your free response questions. And then I want to talk a little bit about free response question structure. So those conversations are going to overlap quite a bit, but I'm focusing on topics first and structure second. So that's the plan for the next 20 minutes. Let's talk argumentative FRQ first. This isn't a hint. This is just me blatantly telling you. These are the 3 required documents on your argumentative FRQ. You know how argumentative FRQs require you to write a defensible thesis, use 2 pieces of evidence, and then rebut the opposition. For those 2 pieces of evidence, one has to come from the list provided, and this is the list provided. The other piece of evidence can be another one of the required documents listed here, any of the other required documents from class, any of the Supreme Court cases that we talked about, or any concept from class as long as you properly identify and explain it. So one piece of evidence in the FRQ, the argumentative FRQ, has to be from this list. So let's very quickly zip through this list. We've talked about the 14th Amendment in a few different contexts now. The 14th Amendment was ratified after the Civil War in order to give newly freed African Americans citizenship. It has some very important clauses that protect everyone's rights on a daily basis. The Due Process Clause, which essentially means that your life, liberty, and property cannot be taken away without the proper judicial procedures. The government should not be able to punish you without following the proper judicial procedures. And the Equal Protection Clause, which means that we should not be treated with unconstitutional differences. The 14th Amendment is one of your options for tomorrow. If you don't feel entirely comfortable with it, or if you don't like it in the context of the question, then pick a different one. Your next option is the Federalist 78. That is the Federalist paper that defends the structure of the judicial branch. So when we hear Federalist 78, we should think judicial branch. And if you remember back to that conversation, Federalist 78 defended life terms for justices, talked a lot about how important it is to insulate Supreme Court justices from the other branches of government to prevent those other branches from encroaching on your rights, and also to insulate the Supreme Court justices from the public to try to make sure that public opinion would not sway the justices' take on constitutionality or whether or not a person's rights are being violated. So Federalist 78, we're thinking defending the structure of the judicial branch particularly defending the decision to keep the judicial branch insulated from public opinion. Article 1 of the Constitution, that's the article of the Constitution that outlines the legislative branch. So this is the article that enumerates the powers to Congress. Article 1 also contains the necessary and proper clause. Article 1 also contains the Commerce Clause. So those are the 3 required documents that you have to choose from. So which one you pick is going to be based on 2 main factors: how comfortable you feel with that document and how you feel the document can relate to your thesis. You're going to want to pick the document that you feel most comfortable, not just describing, but also relating to your thesis. Then you have to choose a second piece of evidence. That second piece of evidence can come from another one of these, or it can come from any other required document, any Supreme Court case, or any concept we talked about in class, as long as you are specifically identifying that concept. A question often comes up, can I use the Constitution twice? Yes, as long as you are using 2 distinct parts of the Constitution and appropriately identifying those parts. So you could use Article 1 and the 14th Amendment, or you could use Article 1 and the 26th Amendment, or you could use Article 1 and you could use Article 3. But I would not pull 2 pieces of evidence from the exact same section of the Constitution. Is that what I wanted to say about that? I think so. Questions about just that piece? The required documents that you'll have to choose from tomorrow. Here's a list of the other required documents if you're having trouble thinking of them. Okay then. So the next topic I want you to brush up on for tomorrow is political ideology: liberal, conservative, libertarian, populist. And for tomorrow's FRQs specifically, I do want you to be able to relate those ideologies to political party. This will be helpful with one of the FRQs tomorrow. All right, so topic-wise, I think that's what I wanted to say. Any questions topic-wise about the FRQs? Okay, then let's talk structure. First, let's address the quantitative analysis FRQ because that's the most straightforward. A quantitative analysis FRQ is going to ask you to interpret a chart or a graph or maybe even a political cartoon. It's a chart for us tomorrow, just as a heads up. If you cannot interpret the data, it makes it difficult to continue on in the question. So really take your time to address part A of the quantitative analysis question. Take your time analyzing the data so that you can move forward accurately with the rest of the question. You're free to ask me as many questions as you want about the FRQs. So if you open up the quantitative analysis FRQ and the graph is really what's, I don't know if it's a chart or a graph. I'm going to call it a chart. It looks like a chart to me. But if you look at that and it's really throwing you off, make sure you're reaching out for help because we want to interpret the chart appropriately before we move on with the rest of the quantitative analysis question. Let's talk about the argumentative question now. We've done this type before. You've watched the instructional video at least once before. The instructional video is available to you again, but let's go through all of the parts of the argumentative FRQ. The first thing it's going to ask you to do is write a defensible thesis. So it's going to give you a prompt, and then it's going to ask you to take a stance on the prompt. Now, let's be honest. When you read the prompt, you might not have a guttural, passionate feeling one way or another, but pretend like you do, because you absolutely have to take a stance. Internet connection unstable, let me know what you missed. Can I get a thumbs up emoji if we're still happening? Yay, thank you. Okay.
You were cutting in and out, but it was still understandable.
Sorry. It's being recorded too. Okay. Defensible thesis. Make one. Take a stance. Make sure you're taking a stance. Even if you don't feel super passionately, take a stance. Because similarly to the quantitative analysis FRQ, you have to understand the data to do the rest of the question. That's even more true with the argumentative FRQ. It's really hard to earn future points in the argumentative FRQ if you don't have a defensible thesis. So use the prompt to take a stance that is clear and that you know you can use the evidence to defend. And we'll come back to the defensible thesis piece in just a second. I just want to go through all the elements of the question. After you write your defensible thesis, you need to select from the list of evidence given to you, explain what that evidence is, and then here's how you earn all the points. Use that evidence to support your thesis. So that's why you want to make sure your thesis is defensible, because you have to defend it. So make sure you write it in a way that gives you something to work with. Make sure that it's not so broad that you don't even know what point you're trying to make. Make sure that it's not so specific that you've locked yourself into this really difficult argument. So you have to identify the evidence. What is it? And then you need to use that evidence to relate back to your thesis. Those are actually two separate points on the College Board rubric. There's the points for explaining the evidence, and then there's the points for relating it back to your thesis. So you know how I've told you the College Board doesn't give partial credit, and that's true, they don't. But these are two separate points to earn. You got to earn the point for explaining the evidence, and then you have to earn the separate point for relating that evidence to your thesis. The lingo for that is called closing the loop. Really make sure you've explained yourself so that it's clear that this evidence relates to your thesis. You don't have to write a ton, but if you're rereading your FRQ and you aren't quite sure that you've closed the loop, that you've related the evidence to your thesis, just toss in one more sentence. It can't hurt, right? To make sure that you've connected the evidence to your thesis. So you have to do that with one of the documents that they give to you. And then you have to do that with a second piece of evidence of your choosing. Another required document, a Supreme Court decision, a concept from class. Explain it, relate it back to your thesis. Questions about that part? And I know that we're going to talk more about the thesis in a second. Okay, then hear me out for this last piece, because I'm going to share with you a hot take that I got this summer. This summer, I was lucky enough to do a workshop with a master AP Gov teacher. This is a guy that helps to write the exams. He grades the AP exams every summer. I was fortunate enough to get to take a workshop with this guy this summer. And here's the advice that he gave us to share with you about the last piece of the argumentative FRQ. It's going to ask you to either refute, rebut, or concede an opposing argument. So you've just made your case, and then it wants you to refute, rebut, or concede the opposing stance. Here's the advice he gave. You can do with this advice what you'd like. He suggested against conceding. You can concede if you want. Go ahead, by all means. But he suggested against it, and here's why. You just worked really hard to prove a point and defend a thesis and use evidence effectively, and then all of a sudden at the end of your essay, you're like, but I guess I could be wrong. Like that's a lot of mental gymnastics to have to do when writing an FRQ. Conceding is saying, here's what the opposition would say to the point that I was making, and here's why the opposition is also true. That's what it would mean to concede. And again, do that if you want to. But I think we can understand how that's a lot of mental flip-flopping in a relatively short essay and in a short period of time. But do it if you want, by all means. The next piece of evidence he gave, or the next piece of advice he gave, is to not nitpick between refuting and rebutting. You can write the same statement whether you refute or you rebut. He said you could treat them like they're the exact same thing. Technically, refuting is like hard no, absolutely not. This is why they're wrong. They are wrong through and through. And rebutting is, okay, I get their point, but here's why my point is better. That's the eensy-weensy distinction between refuting and rebutting. And you can answer this part of the argumentative FRQ without making that distinction. You can say in your FRQ, the opposition might claim X, Y, and Z, but the opposition is incorrect because of A, B, and C. You're not even claiming to refute versus rebut, but you are refuting and rebutting. So that's the hot take on the last part of the argumentative FRQ. Okay, so questions about that before we focus on defensible thesis. All right, so your defensible thesis has to take a stance, and you should be making a point that is broad enough so that you aren't locked into using this evidence in a really specific niche way, but not so broad that you don't have a point to prove or you don't fully know what point you are trying to prove. So my plan for the day, until Mother Nature messed with it, was to have a lot of fun looking at these low stakes arguments. Look how many I have. I mean, what did I think we were going to do today? But these low stakes arguments, and we were going to write some defensible thesis for these arguments. We have a total of 5 minutes. So why don't we pick one and we do a little bit of practice. You can either put it in the chat publicly or privately. You could unmute or you could write it on a piece of paper next to you. Do any of these topics interest you? I mean, what was I thinking? And here, I'll stop the recording now for the part where you share.